Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pilot episode of this podcast.
This is a podcast, yes. This we're gonna call it 20 for 20 because we're both 20, and they're gonna be 20-minute episodes. And we had been talking about doing a podcast for a while, so I'm really excited to finally get this thing going.
Yeah, so Jacob and I, we went to this conference called Passion in Atlanta, Georgia last year around New Year's time.
January, yeah.
And
January 1st.
So when we came back, we had an idea to just start a podcast. We just thought it was something that would be fun for us to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if there isn't a whole lot of people that like this podcast, this is something that is enjoyable for Jacob and I, and we just enjoy to do stuff like this together.
Yeah. The initial idea was so we got back from Passion. That was like January, and then there was like a month or two after that where we wanted to start doing stuff, and we go to a church called Crossroads, and we wanted to have a podcast for that church, and we're gonna call it Crosstalk.
Yeah.
And we had all these plans, and then it kind of just like we never did it. And about a month ago, you texted me and said we should start it up again. So we kind of changed the mission. Like it's not for that, but we can talk about really whatever we want, and we're gonna have a lot of fun doing it. So
Yeah. I don't know what motivated me to bring the podcast back up. All I know is that it was an idea that was flowing through my head, and I've wanted to do something creative for a while that would be sort of something that would be an outreach, but also something that we could just laugh at.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
We want this to be somewhat of a thing where two guys can get together and we can just have a deep conversation, like those late night conversations that you have with your best friend that you've known your whole life.
Yeah, and we want you guys to be a part of that. We want you to see it and be affected by it. Our mission here is to make you guys laugh. I don't know if you know, but I am hilarious. Russell's okay. And we want to entertain you. We want to we want to entertain the audience. We want to inform you about like what's going on in our lives, the lives of those around us, our loved ones, and we want to challenge you both intellectually and spiritually. And we want you to grow from that. We want you to hear what we have to say and, I don't know, form your own opinions. And eventually, what do we want to do?
Eventually, we're going to progress into something that is, well, it's always going to be centered around Christ. But there's going to be more opportunities for that. Q&As is something that we talked about, possibly doing those live, but also having an email where y'all can send in some questions, and then on the episode we'll talk about the questions, and we'll have answers, and we'll add, of course, our own humor into that.
Yeah, because I know a lot of stuff we may say, you may have questions, and I'm sure we will have questions. I'm sure I'll have questions for Russell and vice versa. So we want to give a platform for those questions to be asked, and I don't know, maybe we can answer them, maybe we can't, but hopefully we can. So
Yeah, and also we want to just keep y'all up to date on what's happening in our lives, what the Lord is doing in our lives and in the people's lives around us. We know that real stories impact real people, and part of that is testimonies, and something that we wanted to do here on the initial podcast is invite y'all into our lives a little bit and be vulnerable from the get-go, so you guys know who we are and know what we're about. We're not going to give the full testimony for each other right now at this time, but eventually I'm sure that will come in further episodes.
how would you describe a testimony for someone who...
I would describe a testimony as just a story of how one's life was changed through Christ. And obviously, like, there's testimonies about people like going on diets, like my testimony for this diet, but specifically what we're meaning about a testimony is how Christ has entered our lives and completely changed who we are at our core, and changed our passions, our commitments, and grown us as people.
Yeah,
So Jacob, do you want to start out a little bit with just, I know, like we said your name already, but just who you are, where, like, what background you come from, and then just a little bit of your testimony?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Jacob Faber. I lived in Dubuque my whole life. Russell and I are actually cousins, and we've had a great time over the past year. I've been able to live with Russell, and Tyrell Saunders lives with us as well, and it's been real fun. And this past year has been definitely a year of growth for me, and a little bit before that, things were not so hot with my life. I was kind of directionless. I didn't have an exact how do you say, like, calling or motive. Like, I didn't know where I was going. And that was, you know, a lot of people are okay with that, and at that time I was okay with that. But when I got that calling and got that direction, which I'll get into in a little bit, that callingless and directionlessness became not okay. And that's kind of, it was interesting to me because it, like, my whole being, my whole person had changed. My desires, my wants, my needs, it all changed. Like, it all changed course. And so why it changed course was because Jesus came into my life. And why he came into my life, I don't know. I don't know, because his grace, and he loved me, and I can't explain why he saved me, but he did. And it's been awesome, and it's been hard ever since. You know, there was a time where things weren't great even after I was living with Jesus inside of me. It was sometimes were hard, and you remember that. And we got through that. I had guys like Russell and Tyrell and people who loved me who were able to, like, pick me up and just keep me going. And after that, things got really good. They've been good since. You know, not everything's perfect, like always. You don't want to pretend that life as a Christian is just rainbows and cotton candy. Like, it's hard and things are tough, but things are also good because we have a hope we can look for. We have a hope we can look to, and we have that purpose and that direction I was talking about. Some of that direction, and a big part of my testimony at this point in my life really is the college ministry for Crossroads called 180. And that was something that we talked about, a passion trip earlier, and we were all on that passion trip. When we got back, we noticed, so there was like 20,000, just in our location, 20,000 college kids all there. And we got back from that, back to Dubuque, and it was like nothing. You know, there's maybe, I don't know how many college kids are here, 5,000, 6,000, but there was nothing for them. And that was put on my heart, and I know a lot of other people's hearts, and we wanted to do something about that. So we have been working the last, what is it now? 6-7 months.
August. It's been 8 months.
Oh my goodness.
In the works.
We have been working on 180, the college ministry, for months now, and it's getting to about that time where we're going to launch. There's some details we need to hammer out, and really honestly just small things that need to be done, but you know, the work's been put in, and like the mission is clear, so we're ready to go forward with that, and I'm really excited, and we'll talk a lot more about 180 and whatnot here, I'm sure. But that is something that plays into my story a lot, and since then, that's really been my focus, learning how to do that properly, growing in Christ through doing that properly, through serving him in that way. And it's been hard, it's been stressful, but it's also been a lot of fun, and been kind of a humbling privilege to be able to serve the Lord in that way. That's kind of how I felt with ministry over the past few months. So.
Yeah, and I can witness to Jacob. He came to live at our house like almost exactly a year ago.
Wow, yeah. What is it, August?
Yeah, it is August now, and NICC just started up. And the reason why he initially came here to live in my house was because we spoke about Tyrell, and Tyrell's been a brother to me since high school, and he was here. And because of some early things that he did when he was first driving, when he was like 15, his license got suspended, and he was basically barred from getting a license until just around this time last year.
I forgot that's why I initially moved in.
Yeah.
To drive Tyrell around.
Yeah, so
we're just like, oh, that'd be a good idea.
Jacob was Tyrell's chauffeur, for lack of a better term, and
that was a year ago. Dude.
They had some pretty cool experiences, and through that, even I think y'all got to grow pretty close. And through this past year, all three of us have we formed kind of a tight bond, and that I know that's played a lot into my life, and I also have seen like how that's worked out in your life as well.
Yeah, our circles never, like Tyrell and I's, and even your and I's circles didn't really cross in high school much.
No,
so
never.
it's kind of cool to see how the Lord like brought us together like that. So,
Yeah.
Anyway,
And so just speaking about that whole 180 ministry, and it's really been cool to see how on fire you've been for that, and you've been the leader in that. Originally, when we came up with the idea, Tyrell and I were on the bus ride back, and we were just saying like, dude, we need something, and then we just talked to Jacob as soon as like we said that. He's like, yeah, bro, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, we need to impact college people. And since then, I haven't taken on as big of a leadership role, but Jacob has definitely taken initiative and just really going out and pursuing the mission, meeting up with people on the University of Dubuque's campus, and just building connections with whoever and whatever, and really taking advantage of the gifts that the Lord's given you in terms of outreach.
yeah, the more you try to like build something and look into it, the more you realize it's just like it's pretty much like networking for Christ. Like, you have to find
like that
where
word.
stuff's happening, and then find out where you want stuff to happen, and somehow connect those two all over the place. And it's way harder than it sounds, but
Yeah, I mean,
anyway.
making all those connections and like having all those commitments to different people is not easy by any means. And I know you haven't been perfect in that, and I haven't been perfect in that either. But to get to my story and kind of my testimony, I'll start just from when I was young. Like, I've grown up in a Christian home my whole life. My parents have been Christians from the time they were young. My dad was born in Africa, and his grandfather was a missionary there. And my opa, who is my dad's dad, moved their family to Chicago when my dad was about 6. And then he came to Dubuque when he was around the age of 14 or 15. And so that's just a little bit about like my dad. And my mom came from a small town called Waterloo in Iowa, and she grew up with very, very good Christian parents, and she went to a small Christian school when she was in high school. And they met through some youth group or whatever, and
Your parents?
Yeah, my parents did, from a youth group connection from her being in Waterloo and my
I thought
dad
they met
being
in
in Dubuque.
college.
That's when my dad started pursuing her, was in
But
college.
they
but
met in high school.
yeah, they knew who
Okay.
each other were.
Gotcha.
Eventually my dad ended up chasing my mom around to these different schools, like the University of Northern Iowa, and Emmaus Bible College, which I actually attended, and I'll get into that here. So I just grew up in a really solid home with 3 brothers, the youngest of which just moved out, Calvin, bless his soul.
R.I.P.
He's coming back tomorrow, I
We
think.
miss you, Calvin, if you hear this.
And so it was just a really good environment. But I like all my faith was head knowledge, and I think that's really easy for somebody like me to fall into, like somebody who grew up in a Christian home. Like, for all, like, it's because it's just been like around you your whole life, you
Yeah.
know. Like, it's not like you had like
The
an
knowledge
option, you know.
knowledge was unavoidable, right?
Right.
Like, you were gonna know the stuff you had been hearing for 12 plus years.
Yeah, and so when I was 6, I was baptized, but that really didn't mean anything. It was more like me just pleasing my parents, because I seen my 2 older brothers get baptized, and like, yeah, I want to do that because I see the smile that it brings to my parents' faces and to all their friends. So that was what I did. Fast forward all the way to middle school and high school. That's kind of when I started to rebel.
Definitely all.
I've always, for my family at least, I've always just been kind of the rebellious child. And for those of you that know my brother Bob, he's like a golden child. Like,
Exactly.
Bob,
Golden boy.
like you think about like how you like fantasize about how your life is
Exactly.
going to play out and
Exactly.
what you want it to be. And you know how usually, like, most of the time you don't get everything.
Wife, kids, 9 to 5.
straight out of college making bands.
This is Bob. For context, this is Bob.
That's my brother Bob, and so for me to try to live up to that was something that I never felt like I could, and so to rebel against that, I would go out, I would drink, I would smoke, and I hung out with friends that were considered like the popular kids, and I don't have anything against those guys as people, but just the influences that I had in my life were not the best, and they got me into that scene. And it wasn't until college that I was able to completely escape that. I went to the University of Northern Iowa my freshman year 2 falls ago, and I just was digging myself into a dark hole. Everyone that I was surrounded with only wanted to drink or party or have sex, and I would spend multiple days in my room just alone, just in a dark time and in depression. And I had social media as an outlet, and I would use that to try and get like attention to see who actually cared for me. But that wasn't something that helped me. In fact, social media really pulled me down and pulled me deeper into that hole. So I ended up dropping out of college first before I get into what he's talking about. Okay. And I came home, and I taught my mentor, whose name is Caden Jansen. He's been in my life since I was 13, and he's really helped me grow as a person, and I'm still pretty well connected with him. I don't meet with him as much as I want to, but I strongly suggest for whoever's out there that you find a mentor, somebody that's older that you can look up to and that you can really walk in Christ with. And that's something that Caden did for me, and he advised me. He's like, dude, I just don't think that environment is healthy for you, and it might be best for you to come home. So I came home, started working construction for Bryce Davis for Mid-American Construction. I did that for a few months, went back to school and still worked for him. And during that time, that January through March time is when the Lord really started to change my heart. And I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why I had to change a heart, because I was mad at the Lord for so many reasons. I was just angry because I felt like he'd put me in that situation and surrounded me with these people that I couldn't get away from. But really, that wasn't the truth. I was the one that put myself in that situation. I could have reached out to other people to help me grow, and I didn't. And that was something for myself. Like, it was really hard for me to forgive myself for those things. But as the Lord continued to work in me, he just sparked a desire for me to grow in learning. And that led me to go to Emmaus Bible College last year, and that was one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. Will I go back there? No. But that 1 year, that I got a 1-year biblical certificate, and that was just something that really built the foundation of my faith, and I could really find out what I believed in and support that and find that support in the Bible.
What do you think your biggest takeaway from Emmaus was? Because I think a lot of people know what Emmaus, a lot of people don't even know how to pronounce it. I had a dude tell me once, what is Emmaus College? But so people know of it, they know it's a Bible college, but like, what was your takeaway from Emmaus, would you say? If you had to say, I know you have probably many, but like one takeaway. My takeaway
was learning how to learn. I hated reading before I went to Emmaus, but I really had to learn how to learn. And it was cool to be able to like take what I learned in school and then go back and bounce that off of like my dad or other people that I had in class. And so
sweet.
But we're getting close to the 20-minute mark here.
Yeah, we want these are going to be 20-minute episodes because we want you guys to be entertained. We want you to stay in it. So we're going to chop it at 20 every single week. And like we said, this is a podcast Russell and I are putting on. We want to help you guys understand like how our lives have changed, and we want to make you guys laugh, and we want you guys to have fun. We want to challenge the way you think, challenge the way you feel. And yeah, that's kind of our goal. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hopefully do this once a week or sometime.
Yep, and hopefully we get better. So
yeah. All right, guys.